What is going on, everybody? How are you all doing out there? I hope this video is finding you well. Welcome or welcome back to Get Right On In. My name is Andrew, for those of you who do not know, and today I am just going to be reviewing the upcoming book called Shade by Chad Nicholas. I was given an advanced reader's copy, also known as an ARC, from the author himself in exchange for an honest review, and so that is what I am about to do. With all of that now out of the way, without further ado, let's get right on in. So fun fact about this book before I get too involved in the review is that when Mr. Nicholas was on my, I believe, May edition of my Readers vs. Writers series, he actually name dropped this book, and I was super excited about it because I was among the first people to know, and he put it out on his social media like the day before that video came out so all the rest of you could know, and I felt very honored that he asked me to read this book, and I very much enjoyed this book. It was very fast-paced, it was very thrilling, and while I personally have not yet had the opportunity to read his first book called Nightmare, I just think that it's really awesome that he pushed himself to write in a different genre, so now he has one thriller book and one horror book, because I like a well-rounded author. The plot of Shade follows Detective Jack Diamond as he tries to protect a woman named Sarah Michaels from a serial killer who is after her because she has certain traits that he looks for in the women that he kills. After they meet, the story oscillates between a previous case and the current one, and from there the thriller just turns into a page-turning adventure with twists around every corner. So let's talk about some of the things that I did like, and I did really enjoy the character work in this novel. Jack and Sarah work really well together as the main story progresses, and also the previous case that Jack went through really does just tug a little bit at the heartstrings. Outside of the character work, the pacing of this novel was actually also really well done. At just under 400 pages, there is never a dull moment. I didn't feel like it dragged out at any point, and my desire to finish quickly wasn't because I wanted to just get it done, it was because I was just genuinely interested in what was about to happen. I also enjoyed certain elements of PTSD and how people deal with that are sprinkled throughout this text, but I cannot talk too much about that without getting into any spoilers. For me, just the way that the main characters dealt with their ghosts was just very well thought out and added a lot to the story, in my opinion. Each storyline was interesting in its own right, and I really don't think that the whole story would have worked as well without the other one. As for some things that I wasn't as much of a fan of, some elements of reality were just pushed a little bit farther than what I would want or expect out of a thriller novel. In a horror novel like the one that Nicholas wrote before this, then there's definitely room for the imagination to kind of like fill in the gaps every so often, and certain semblances of reality can be pushed to make the story better. But some things in this book just felt a little reminiscent of things like Halloween, where with Jason, like no matter what you do to him, he just won't die. The cases of that weren't as extreme in this book, but I have seen other reviews, namely from Leslie over at the Nerdy Narrative, who talk about how certain things of the FBI don't necessarily work the way that they were portrayed in this book. And in some cases I would agree with that, but in other cases I would also say that it does add a little bit to the story, but there are just certain areas that are just stretched a little bit more than what I would have preferred. A small thing, and one that I'm really not sure how I would fix if I were him, is just that all of the chapters taking place before the current storyline are written in italics. At first, the oscillating storylines was a little bit jarring. I didn't really realize that we had gone back in time, but even once I had figured all of that out, the transitions became smoother, but I still struggled a lot with that italicized text, especially because a lot of the back then chapters are just so important and so pivotal to what is going on in the current storyline, and reading it on a screen, I don't know, it was just a little bit difficult for me sometimes to, like, I don't know, adjust to the words. It was just difficult on the eyes. And I know that that's like a small and nitpicky thing, but there's just so much italicized text throughout this book that it just was a little bit difficult toward the end every time I had pages and pages of italicized words to read through. It certainly did not ruin the story for me. And I think that if I had had a physical copy, it might have been a little bit different, but the use of the italics is probably like the biggest issue that I actually have with this story. That all being said, I am just very proud of Mr. Nicholas for not falling into a sophomore slump. Like I said, I haven't read his other book yet, but reading this book definitely makes me want to still. I can't really do any kind of comparison as far as growth happens, so I don't really know how much he has grown in this book as compared to the first one that he wrote. But I do think that this book was well written, and I am appreciative of the fact that he was able to deliver a heart-pounding thriller the way that he did. I'm not much of a crime thriller reader, but I want to get more into that genre, and this book certainly helped me with my interest in that. And I think that once it hits the shelves next month in October, it will do very well in the market that it's trying to get into. So outside of some of those little small nitpicky things, I overall would give this book about a 3.75 to 4 out of 5, if not a little bit higher, but it was very well done. So good job, Chad. I'm proud of the book that you have written, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to read it before everybody else, and I'm glad that it was a book that I enjoyed, because it would be so much more awkward if it wasn't. Now I guess I'm just gonna go have to pick up Nightmare and see what the differences in those books are and how much he did grow, but in the meantime, I'm just going to leave that here. Have any of you had the opportunity to read Shade yet? Are you as excited about it coming out as now I am? Because I think I will probably go ahead and get a physical copy of this. Let me know down in those comments what you think, if you're excited, if you've read Nightmare, and if I should read Nightmare as well, because I've had that one I think on my wish list for like a year now, ever since I started BookTube, but I have not had a chance to get to it yet, and I would love to. I would also love to hear all of your thoughts down in those comments, so feel free to share. And while you are down there, if you enjoyed this video, I'd also love it if you would consider giving it a little thumbs up, as well as potentially consider pressing on that little subscribe button so you can join me on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and sometimes on Sundays, for bookish and writerly and entertainment-y-esque content just like this. In the meantime, I hope you all have a day just as beautiful as you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!